Welcome back. The New York Times reporting the Justice Department has replaced its New York team of agents and lawyers investigating the death of Eric Garner. You may recall Garner lost his life in 2014 on Staten Island while he was being arrested for selling untaxed cigarettes. His last words, "I can't breathe," became a rallying cry for protesters that were part of the Black Lives Matter movement last year. For analysis of this case and other stories, we are pleased to welcome once again to the anchor desk, as they waited patiently through the break, former CIA analyst Lisa Ruth and former New York Police Special Investigator Michael Solomon. Michael is the author of the book, The Conversion Prophecy. Thanks to you both for being here, and a reminder to you, wherever you're watching, to call us at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. Lisa, talk about selective enforcement. Before the break, we were bemoaning the incurious nature of the Department of Justice to really get down to brass tacks with Hillary, but now they bring everything to bear in what they will call, quote, a civil rights case. Your analysis of that?
You know, for those of us who've lived overseas, and JD, you've certainly traveled around, one of the things, every time I'd come back home, I'd say, we have this fair system. We have this system where it's really everyone's treated equally, and the goal is to do what's right. And you see around the world where that's not the case. I can't say that anymore here. And I really feel like the pressure from above, wherever it's coming from, is impacting this. And what people need to understand is this corrupts the whole system. It's not just this case. It's you, it's me, it's everybody else. What happened to real justice in this country? And it's incredibly disturbing.
Michael Solomon, you're a former New York cop. The DOJ, it looks like, trying to ensure now, changing its team of investigators and attorneys to take some sort of action that heretofore has not been taken to the administration's liking. What if you were still walking that thin blue line in New York today, what would this say to you?
Well, if I were an FBI agent or anybody investigating that case now, and the people from the top came down and said, you're being replaced, to me, I mean, that would be the biggest insult in the world. Here I am given the charge of being the investigator or the lead investigator, and the people from the top don't have any faith and confidence in me, the guy who they hired because of my integrity and my faith and my confidence. I mean, that has got to be beyond belief. I mean, they're telling me point blank, as they're telling the investigators point blank, we don't trust you. You know, it sounds like the fix is in. This is coming out of the Department of Justice, and they're gonna take this poor police officer down, Pantiello, for something. They can't charge him with murder now. The grand jury didn't indict him. Whatever happened to double jeopardy in this country? Whatever happened to that? I mean, here was a guy who was 400 pounds. He was about 4 to 6 inches taller than his police officer. He didn't go to choke him. He jumped up to grab him by the neck to take him down, to hold him. I mean, from what they say in the videotape, the hold was only about 18 seconds. You can't choke anybody to death in 18 seconds. They'll go unconscious, go limp, and hit the ground. And then your resistance is done. But I don't know. I think the fix is in, and they're going to charge him with something just to satisfy who? What would they do? What would they do if Eric Garner was white and the police officer was black? What would the decision be then?
Well, here's what we're going to do right now. We're going to go to the phones at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629 to Harrison, Arkansas for Grant. Welcome, Grant.
Good day.
Yes, sir.
Thanks
What's on your
for having
mind?
me on.
It's good to have you.
I would just like to urge American citizens that they need to wake up and realize that this is probably the last chance that the free world will ever have to vote for a individual who is not a professional politician, who has the passion for the issues that he has voiced to the American public that he has concerns over. And I think a businessman of his background would do a great job. You know that he's going to appoint and ask people who have the knowledge of all these different areas who will help him. We just need to give him a chance, and I hope the media doesn't override it.
All right, Grant, we very much appreciate your call from Harrison, Arkansas, and of course, in an earlier situation involving Mr. and Mrs. Clinton in positions of national leadership, there came the term Arkancide, which has not been put on the law books yet, but enjoys a certain currency within even polite conversation. Not all is lost when it comes to our police. New Gallup poll says 3 out of 4 Americans have a great deal of respect for police. That number is the highest it's been since 1967. Another 17% say they have some. Only 7% say they have hardly any respect for police officers. Now, I don't know how they came up with the poll, but Michael, you asked the question earlier, and I would just change it a little bit. What would happen if a commander-in-chief didn't step out in his role as president and always cast aspersions on law enforcement and the job law enforcement does?
You know, that's exactly what's happening. And there's a saying out there that a fish rots from the head. And we've got the head, unfortunately, the head of this country, who is projecting his views, probably when he grew up in Chicago or wherever, against the police. I mean, it started with the case with the beer summit, if you remember, with the professor from Harvard, who was breaking into a house and nobody knew he lived there. He lived there 2 weeks, and I mean, what if that wasn't his house? What if that was an intruder or a burglar? And the police left and said, okay, fine, you told me you live here, I believe it. But to be arrogant and not be able to show identification.
The initial thought of the president to badmouth the cop reflexively, you know, they give this polite term, community organizer. Let's call that job what it is. Take it out of the Alinsky playbook here. It is a street agitator, which brings me back to Lisa Ruth. Lisa Ruth, in your days in working as a CIA analyst, there is something called situational awareness. Mm-hmm. What do you think the reality is for cops on the beat and the situational awareness based on what we have seen with the rise in violence against police, allegedly not caused by all these pronouncements, but certainly part and parcel of Black Lives Matter and the chants die pigs die on the streets of New York and other cities?
Well, you know, we've seen it, Dallas, for example. And if you're a police officer today, and I talk to my colleagues in this area who are police officers, who are just doing an amazing job at things like community relations, no matter what, they tell me, and I'm sure they tell Michael the same thing, you're always now aware. I mean, they were aware before, but you're now at a different level. And again, the threat level now is so much higher because there is this implicit belief that it's okay to attack a police officer. I mean, when I was growing up, when you were growing up, it was yes, sir, no, matter what. And now there's this sense of police officers are wrong first and maybe go right, but they're wrong to begin with. And this does increase violence, and it increases the possibility of violence against our police officers.
Let's get back to our phones, 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-639-7629. And they assure me in the control room, my old pal from Buckeye, Arizona, Rick, is back on the line. Hi, Rick.
Hi, JD.
Well, hey.
Unfortunately, Rick walked away, and you have Mrs. Rick.
Well, it's even better to have Mrs. Rick on. What's on your mind?
JD, I am 100% behind Donald Trump. Get him in, back the officers. Don't let them get away with what they are doing now. We're Big Joe Arpaio supporters down here. And we wanted to ask you if we could just mention tonight the Republican Party of the West Valley is having a movie night, and we're showing Hillary's America. And we just wanted to get the people to come on out and bring all the undecided voters with you.
All right, if you're on the west side of Phoenix, there around Buckeye, Arizona, Mrs. Rick gave you the word, and I know that place pretty well. It's kind of a selective little appeal to folks there, but it may help Mrs. Rick. We thank you for the call. Before we go, interesting what happened overseas in Pakistan, where there was an attack on a police academy. Now, we tend to think of that as, quote, terrorism overseas. But given the prevailing frame of mind in this country right now, Is it too far afield, Lisa, to think that something like that could happen here?
No, I mean, absolutely not. And I think it's actually a combination of terrorism and domestic sentiment. I think police are not only a target domestically, but again, ISIS has called for attacks against military and police. I think these guys have to look behind them all the time.
Lisa Ruth, we appreciate your time. Michael Solomon, as always, the streetwise New Yorker, giving us wisdom here today, and we appreciate it very much. There is lots more to come on this edition of America Talks Live, specifically this day in history, and a few more surprises, plus your phone calls at 1-877-NEWSMAX. Stay with us. There's more ahead.